Your Chicago Bears are the worst team in football. Let's be honest. Those guys lost to the Denver Broncos, for God's sake. All right, John, so here's what we got for the NFL. We're about a quarter of the way through, right? Now we've played, 4 games. Okay, who are the top 5 teams right now? Who's the worst team right now? Who's the most disappointing teams right now? So I'll give you disappointing with Cincinnati and the Chiefs. Now, I know the Chiefs are 3-1. But, John, they got beat week 1 against Detroit. That was not supposed to happen. By the way, that was in Arrowhead. Then they actually go out there, and should the Jets have probably won that game
yes.
yesterday? Yeah, I agree with you. They just don't look like the Chiefs of last year to me. They just don't. There's been something there that just looks a little bit different. They're a little more vulnerable. Cincinnati, that's one where I just can't quite figure it out. They have one good week and then they go terrible. And then they have an okay week. I mean, I think Joe Burrow is one of the better quarterbacks in all the NFL, but they don't look all that great this year either. Your Chicago Bears are the worst team in football. Let's be honest. Those guys lost to the Denver Broncos, for God's sakes. I mean, you actually looked like a pretty good team for half of that game, and then the collapse started to come. But of the good teams, I'll give you right now, 49ers, unbelievable. Offense, defense, everything, right? Mm-hmm. I think the Lions are right after them. I think the Buffalo Bills after week 1 against the Jets. And you know what? Week 1, when you don't play in the preseason, that's understandable. You might have a great game, but you might not. Maybe you're not ready for it. And that's what I think Buffalo was. They just weren't ready for the game, John. Then you look at the Eagles and the Ravens. I think those are your top 5. But when you look at the 49ers, they pretty much are in the top 5 of just about every good category in football, offensively and defensively. So they are my number 1.
They're the team nobody wants to play. The Eagles are great, like you say, Pete, but nobody wants to play the 49ers. And yet, unfortunately, some of the lower teams in the league are going to have to play them. But the worst is the Bears, with Carolina very close second. And you know what? Denver is horrible too. The Broncos are horrible, and that's why we joked about it being relegated, that they should have to relegate the worst teams in the NFL, Pete, should have to be relegated down to indoor football or, into, spring league football or whatever, and bring up one of those other teams, because this team is terrible.
Yeah.
The coaches are terrible. The defensive coordinator was having a breakdown, so he quit football altogether. Just said, I'm just not doing this anymore. I mean, yeah, the Bears are the worst. There's no doubt about that. And I agree with you about KC is not the KC of last year. Doesn't mean Mahomes can't pull it out. Kelsey's still very, very good. But, Taylor Swift is a distraction. All those commercials are a distraction. I will be shocked, Pete, if they can repeat. I think they'll get through to a fairly high level in the playoffs, but I don't know that they can repeat with this many distractions out there.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. By the way, if you might not have seen this one, John, and I just decided to kind of gloss over it, but the XFL and the USFL have now merged. So could one of the better teams there beat the Chicago Bears, I guess.
Hell yeah.
I agree with you, by the way, because that's how bad they really might be. All right.
Pete, as long as Fields is anticipating where the receivers are going to go, even though he knows the route isn't sending them there, because he said that in the press conference yesterday. He said, well, he's supposed to float, and he did what he was supposed to, but I thought he might do this. And it's like, why?
They're having a hard time, John. We all know it. I mean, it's just a struggle. And I thought they could have improved with what they did in the offseason, what they did in the draft. They did not. And they got rid of a running back that's now a superstar with Detroit right in that northern. I mean, honestly, what in the world? All right. So next we're going to hit a little bit of college football, John. Now we're 5 weeks into the season here, right? Who do you think, who's separating away? And I'll give you one team that I think coming into this year, they were probably considered to be very good. But I think they're more than very good, but we'll find out this weekend. Texas. I watch that team. I see that quarterback. The quarterback looks like somebody who could be playing on Sundays. So that quarterback is great. The running game, pretty outstanding. They've got one guy who's just absolutely incredible, and then they've got two receivers and a tight end, John. So offensively, I think Texas could be one of these. I don't know. I guess they're not necessarily a sleeper, but everybody talks about Georgia. Everybody talks about Bama. Everybody talks about USC. By the way, USC more and more, even though they're winning and they're 5-0, they just don't do it in an impressive way. I don't know what's wrong with that team, but for all the talent they've got and a Heisman caliber quarterback and everything else, I can't quite figure them out, John. But so who do you have any team that you think is a little bit of a surprise team out there? Maybe it's Oklahoma. I don't know. But who do you look at? Is it Ole Miss?
It is Ole Miss, Pete. I like the way Ole Miss plays. I like the way Oregon State mopped up on a really good team. Oregon State was tough.
Yeah.
And, the Utes are usually a team that gives you a real fight. That wasn't the case this time. But, Pete, I texted you about, the tight end from Georgia who was just a beast again. Yeah. The guy's 6'4", 235, runs a 4.5 40, All-American, Maxwell Award winner. Or is it not the Max? Is it the Maxwell, Pete?
It's Mackey. Is it the Mackey? Yeah.
The Mackey Award winner last year. And it looks like he's going to do it again because that kid is just a beast. And he's one of the reasons that they escaped because they could have lost. That was a really fired up Auburn team.
Yeah.
But in terms of USC, I agree with you. Caleb threw for, I think, 6 touchdowns. But, we both know that the defense at my Colorado Buffaloes struggles, and especially without Sanders, Pete, because Shakur Sanders' brother wasn't back there on the defensive side because he has a kidney injury, and Travis Hunter had that liver injury, cheap shot. So, with those two not there, I think they're very vulnerable, and USC took advantage. I did see a real grit out of Shadur Sanders and the offense coming back to make it, basically a 7-point game, Pete. They were getting blown out, and they came back to make it, 41-48? Right. That was great. I mean, there was a lot to cheer about there, and Dion should be proud of the way those kids fought. It's also a little something. I have to give this to USC, Pete. When you go play at altitude, for any of you that have never put on pads and had to run under a hot sun at altitude, you get worn out in the first half. And USC looked like they were dragging in the second half, Pete. But, of course, every team that plays at altitude has to deal with that, so it's not unique to them. But it looked like they ran out of gas.
Yeah.
But Texas, I think Texas, Florida State looks interesting. Washington looks great. And as you've already said, that quarterback, I think the Washington quarterback, Pete, is one to really keep an eye on, other than the Texas quarterback. Those are my top picks right now.
Yeah, my long shots, I shouldn't say long shots, but the teams outside of Texas that I love, you mentioned it. I mean, Washington, Michael Penix is unbelievable. The guy's got 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 75% completion. Not bad. Bo Nix, he's got 15 touchdowns, 1 interception. 80% completion, John. 80% for the year. This isn't just a single game. And then Oklahoma. This kid, Dylan Gabriel, is a stud. And that's the game. The Red River rivalry or whatever. These guys are going to be getting after it. That's Texas, Oklahoma. That's going to be a big one. That's this weekend. That should be pretty interesting. That's where Texas has to show if they truly are the team that I kind of think they might be. And if they're not, then maybe Oklahoma should be a little bit higher because they're undefeated and look pretty damn good. So we'll have to see as the weekend gets a little bit closer. I got one last one, which is the dark horse, Washington State. Be careful. These guys are undefeated. They can put up a lot of points, and they actually can play a little bit of defense on top of it. But they had a bye this past week, so they didn't play. They're still sitting at 3-0 or 4-0 or whatever. But that's a good football team. So I think that there's a lot of fun things going on in college football, and the Pac-12 is driving that fun.
Yep. Well, like I say, Pete, Oregon State really impressed me also.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're a dark horse because they're a top 20 program right now. They're number 15, I think, this week. But that team played its heart out. And that was, just a very impressive win, I think. Again, against a team that beat USC twice last year. I know that was last year. It's not this year, but that's still a really good Utah team, and they made them look silly.
Yep, great football team. They play great defense. They've been a little lacking on offense this year, but that Oregon State, John, that big kid from Clemson is running the offense pretty nicely out there, and they play pretty good on defense too. So they're doing everything right. The Pac-12 is dominating this year.
Yep. Well, they're going out in style, Pete.
Yeah.
All right, we're going out in style right now, folks. Make sure you check out marketrebellion.com/get started. If you'd like to get started in learning a little more about trading options, we have beginner, intermediate, and advanced courses. Encourage you to check that out. And Pete and I will be back tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time.